She was 11 when she killed her first wolf, not with a gun but with her bare hands in a desperation that tasted like copper. And that was before the Apache found her frozen in the December snow, more dead than alive, clutching her baby brother to her chest. Emma Hartley had lived on the frontier for 3 years, long enough to know that survival meant doing things that would haunt you later. Her father had been killed 6 months earlier by outlaws, shot in the back over a leather pouch of gold he'd supposedly stolen from them. Her mother had died 2 weeks ago, bleeding out after delivering a baby that never took its first breath. Now it was just Emma and Tommy, 3 years old, with their father's blue eyes and their mother's trusting smile. Too young to understand that the world wanted them dead. December came to Colorado territory like a executioner, cold and merciless. When the outlaws burned the Henderson farm 2 miles east, Emma knew they were coming for her next. She packed what she could carry: a knife, a blanket, dried meat that was already running out. She wrapped Tommy in every piece of clothing they owned and ran into the wilderness. The blizzard hit on the second day. Emma couldn't see 10 feet ahead. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago. Tommy had stopped crying, which was worse than the crying. She stumbled through snow that came up to her knees, then her thighs, then her waist. That's when the wolf found them. It came out of the white like a ghost, all gray fur and yellow eyes and hunger. Emma had no gun, no weapon except her father's hunting knife. When the wolf lunged, she didn't think. She just moved. The knife went into its throat. Hot blood sprayed across the snow, across her face, across Tommy's small body. Emma fell beside the dead wolf and couldn't get up. This was it then. This was how they'd die. Frozen in the snow beside the animal she'd killed. At least they'd die together. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she was warm. A fire crackled nearby. Tommy slept beside her, breathing steadily, his cheeks pink instead of blue. And across the fire sat someone Emma's exhausted mind couldn't quite process. An Apache woman, maybe 25, with long black hair and 2 braids wrapped with red cloth. She wore a deerskin dress and multiple layers against the cold. Her face was beautiful in a severe way, all sharp angles and watchful eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by more. "You are awake," the woman said in accented English. "Good. I thought you might not wake at all." Emma tried to sit up. Her body screamed in protest. "Who are you?" "You may call me Asha." The woman stirred something in a clay pot over the fire. "You may also thank me for not leaving you to freeze." "Thank you." Emma's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "My brother is fine. Sleeping. He is strong, that one." Asha poured liquid from the pot into a wooden cup. "Drink this. It will help with the cold in your bones." Emma took the cup. The liquid was bitter but warm. "Why did you save us?" Asha was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When she spoke, her voice carried something that sounded like old grief. "Because someone should have saved mine. Yours. My family. They are dead now. Long dead." Asha's jaw tightened. "You do not need to know more than that." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Emma studied the cave they were in, small, hidden, clearly lived in. Supplies stacked neatly in one corner. Weapons hung on the wall. This wasn't a temporary shelter. This was a home. "How long have you lived here alone?" Emma asked. 5 years. "And I wish to continue doing so." Asha looked at Emma directly. "I will make you an offer. I will teach you to survive this winter. Food, fire, shelter, hunting. Everything you need to keep yourself and your brother alive. When spring comes, you leave. You go find your people. And you forget you ever saw me. Do you understand?" Emma understood more than Asha probably intended. This woman was hiding. From who or what, Emma didn't know. But she recognized desperation when she saw it. She'd been living with it for months. "Why would you help us if you want to be alone?" Asha's face flickered with something painful. "Because I failed to save my own child. Perhaps I can save you instead. That is reason enough." "I accept," Emma said, "but I need to tell you something first. There are men looking for me. Bad men. My father stole something from them before he died, and they think I know where it is." "Do you?" "Yes. $10,000 in gold hidden in the ruins of our old cabin." Asha's eyebrows rose slightly. "That is a fortune. That's why they'll never stop looking. Then we will make sure they do not find you." Asha stood graceful despite her heavy clothing. "But understand this: if you bring danger to me, if you betray my location to anyone, I will kill you myself. I have survived 5 years alone. I will not die because of a foolish child." Emma believed her. I won't betray you. Good. Now sleep. Tomorrow your real education begins. The winter months that followed were the hardest and strangest of Emma's life. Asha was a relentless teacher demanding perfection in everything. How to track deer through snow, how to set snares for rabbits, how to start fire with nothing but friction and patience, how to move silently through the forest, how to read the weather in the clouds and the behavior of birds. Emma learned to shoot a bow because guns were loud and drew attention. She learned which plants could heal and which could kill. She learned to tan leather and sew warm clothing. She learned the Apache language, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds while Asha corrected her pronunciation with infinite patience. Tommy learned too in his own way. At 3, he absorbed language like a sponge. He called Asha Dada at first, which made her flinch. No, little one. Call me Asha. But you like Dada, Tommy insisted with the certainty of very small children. Emma laughed. He's just confused. All children mix things up. But she noticed things. Small things. The way Asha's hands were too large, too callous, too scarred for someone who claimed to have done only women's work. The way she never bathed in front of them, always going far downstream where Emma couldn't follow. The way her voice sometimes dropped lower before she caught herself and raised it again. The way she fought. One afternoon, Asha was teaching Emma hand-to-hand combat. Your enemies will not always be far away, she explained. You must know how to fight close. She moved like water, like violence, made graceful. Every strike was precise, controlled, devastating. Emma had seen her father fight, had seen frontier men who thought themselves tough. None of them moved like this. This was something else. Something trained. Something military. Who taught you to fight like that? Emma asked, breathing hard after being thrown to the ground for the 5th time. Asha paused. My husband. Before he died, he must have been a great warrior, the greatest I knew. Asha's voice carried genuine pain. He taught me everything. And then he was taken from me along with our child. I'm sorry. Do not be sorry. Be strong. Sorry does not keep you alive. But Emma saw the way Asha's hands trembled slightly when she spoke of her lost family. Saw the way she sometimes touched a small wooden carving she wore on a leather cord around her neck. A bird in flight, crude but clearly made with love. Winter deepened. The world became nothing but white and cold in the constant work of survival. But inside the cave there was warmth. There was safety. There was something that felt almost like family. Then the outlaws came. Emma was gathering firewood near the cave entrance when she heard the horses. Multiple horses moving fast. She dropped the wood and ran inside. Asha men coming. Asha grabbed her bow, moved to the cave entrance. Through the bare trees they could see 6 riders. The leader was a thick man with a beard like tangled wire. Emma recognized him immediately. That's Silas Morgan. He was my father's partner. The one looking for the gold, yes. They watched as Silas and his men rode toward the valley below where smoke from a distant cabin rose into the gray sky. The Henderson place, or what was left of it. They are searching, Asha said quietly. Looking for you. Burning places you might hide. We have to warn whoever lives there. No, we stay hidden. That is survival. But even as Asha said it, they heard the screams. A woman's voice, high and terrified. Then a younger voice, a girl. Emma was moving before she thought about it, grabbing her bow, running toward the sound. Behind her, Asha cursed in Apache and followed. They reached the cabin to find Silas's men dragging a teenage girl from the building. The girl fought like a wildcat, screaming and clawing. Emma recognized her, Sarah Briggs, the Reverend's daughter from the settlement. Where's the Hartley girl? Silas was shouting. We know she came this way. Where is she? I don't know, Sarah screamed. I don't know anything. Emma notched an arrow, her hand steady despite her racing heart. Asha grabbed her wrist. Do not. There are too many. I can't let them hurt her. You will die. The boy will be alone. Emma looked back toward the cave where Tommy waited. Looked at Sarah being struck across the face by one of the outlaws. Made her choice. Then help me not die. Something flickered in Asha's eyes. Not approval exactly. Recognition, maybe. She nodded once. Stay in the trees. Shoot only when you have clear targets. Do not miss. What followed was chaos. Emma's first arrow took one of the outlaws in the shoulder. Not a kill shot, but enough to make him scream and drop his gun. Asha's arrow went through another man's throat, clean and silent. The remaining men scattered, searching for their attackers. Emma moved through the trees the way Asha had taught her, silent as snow. She shot again, missed, reloaded. Her third arrow caught a man in the leg. Then she heard Asha shout a wordless cry of pain and rage. Emma ran toward the sound. Asha was fighting two men at once. One had a knife. The other was using a length of chain as a weapon. Asha moved between them like a dancer blocking, striking, rolling away from the chain that would have crushed her skull. The man with the knife lunged. His blade caught Asha's dress, tearing it across the chest. And that's when Emma saw it. Beneath the torn deerskin was binding. Cloth wrapped tight around a distinctly male chest. The outlaw saw it too. His eyes went wide. What the... He didn't finish. Asha's fist crushed his throat. He fell choking. She turned to the man with the chain, and her face was different now. Harder. No longer trying to hide. No longer careful. She fought like a man who'd spent his whole life fighting. Brutal, efficient, terrifying. She killed him in seconds. When it was over, 5 men lay dead or dying. Silas had fled on horseback, his retreat marked by the thunder of hooves disappearing into the forest. Sarah was free, shaking, but alive, her dress torn, and her face bruised, but her eyes clear with the shock of survival. And Emma stood 10 feet away, staring at Asha with her torn dress, and her secret written clearly in the exposed binding beneath. The world seemed to have gone silent. Even the wind had stopped. Snow drifted down in lazy spirals, settling on the bodies, on the blood that steamed in the cold air, on the impossible truth that lay between them like a chasm. Their eyes met across the blood-stained snow. Emma, Asha said, and her voice was different too. Deeper. No longer pitched high and careful. A man's voice roughened by exertion and something that might have been fear. I can explain. Emma felt like the ground was falling away beneath her feet, like she was back in that blizzard, freezing and lost and certain of nothing. You're a man, Asha, or whoever he really was, said nothing. Just stood there, breathing hard, chest heaving beneath the torn fabric and exposed binding, covered in blood that wasn't his own. One hand still gripped a knife, the blade red to the hilt. The other hung loose at his side, trembling slightly, in a way Emma had never seen before. He looked vulnerable suddenly, exposed in more ways than one. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. Sarah stumbled toward them, her legs unsteady, one hand pressed to her bruised cheek. Thank you both. You saved my... She stopped mid-sentence, seeing Emma's face, seeing the way Emma stared at Asha, seeing something in the tension between them that didn't make sense. What's wrong? Nothing, Emma managed, though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. Hollow, distant. We need to go. Silas will come back with more men. He won't give up. Not after this. They moved in silence back toward the cave. Asha walked ahead, shoulders tight and rigid, not looking back. His movements were different now, no longer the careful, measured grace he'd maintained for months. He moved like what he was, a warrior, each step purposeful, scanning the forest for threats, one hand resting on the knife at his belt. The deception had fallen away completely, and what remained was something harder, sharper, more dangerous than the gentle teacher who'd shown Emma how to trap rabbits. Sarah kept glancing between them, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Her mouth opened several times as if to ask questions, but something in Emma's expression must have warned her off. She walked in confused silence, occasionally touching her bruised face and wincing. The journey back felt endless. Emma's mind churned with 1,000 thoughts, none of them complete. Every memory of the past months was rewriting itself in her head. Asha's 2 large hands, the voice that sometimes dropped low before catching itself, the way he never bathed in front of them, the scars, the fighting skills that seemed impossibly advanced. All the small signs Emma had noticed but explained away. She felt stupid, betrayed, angry. And underneath it all, something else she couldn't name. A feeling that maybe this changed everything, or maybe it changed nothing at all. At the cave, Tommy ran out to meet them. He'd been playing with sticks near the entrance, arranging them in patterns only a 3-year-old mind could understand. When he saw Asha, his face lit up with uncomplicated joy. Asha, you came back. He launched himself at Asha's legs, wrapping his small arms around them in a fierce hug. Of course, little one. The voice was still deep, no longer trying to be anything but what it was. Asha picked Tommy up, held him close, and Emma saw the way his arms trembled slightly. The way he pressed his face against Tommy's hair for just a moment, breathing and steadying himself. I will always come back. Tommy pulled back, looking at Asha's face with the uncanny perception small children sometimes possessed. Emma angry. Yes. but she has good reason. Why? Because I kept a secret from her. A very big secret. And secrets hurt people, even when we don't mean them to. Tommy considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Then he patted Asha's cheek with one small hand. It's okay. Emma forgives fast. She forgave me when I broke Mama's cup. Despite everything, Emma felt her throat tighten. She'd forgotten about that cup, the last thing they'd had from their mother. Tommy had been carrying it carefully across the cabin when he'd tripped. Emma had yelled at him, watched him cry, and then held him while they both mourned the loss of something irreplaceable. Sarah looked more confused than ever. Emma felt like she might scream or cry or both. The emotions were a knot in her chest, pulling tighter with every breath. Sarah, take Tommy inside, please. The older girl obeyed, though she cast worried glances back as she led the toddler into the cave. Tommy went reluctantly, looking over his shoulder at Asha with concern written across his small features. When they were alone, Emma turned to face Asha fully. No, not Asha. Someone else. Someone she'd thought she knew but apparently didn't know at all. What's your real name, Ashki? He said it quietly, like confessing a sin. It means boy in my language, in Navajo. Though I am Apache by tribe, my mother was Navajo. She gave me the name. So this whole time, the whole winter, you were lying to me. Emma heard her voice rising, cracking. Every single day, every conversation, every moment you were teaching me, training me, acting like a mother, almost. It was all a lie. Yes, the simple admission made it worse somehow. No excuses, no justifications, just the bare truth laid out between them. Emma's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to hit something, to scream, to make the world make sense again. Why pretend to be a woman? Why not just be yourself, I would have. She stopped because she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Would she have stayed if she'd known? Would she have trusted a strange Apache warrior with her life and her brother's life? The answer sat heavy and uncomfortable in her chest. Ashki sat down heavily on a rock near the cave entrance, suddenly looking exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the fight they'd just survived. His shoulders slumped, his head bowed. He began unwrapping the torn binding from his chest, wincing, as the cloth pulled away from skin, rubbed raw by months of constant pressure. Underneath his torso was scarred, knife wounds old and white, bullet holes puckered and dark, burns that looked like they'd come from fire or heated metal, the maps of violence written on flesh, telling a story of survival that Emma could only begin to imagine. He looked up at her and his eyes were older than his face, ancient with grief. Because 5 years ago my village was attacked by American soldiers. It was early morning. Most of the warriors were out hunting. They killed 60 people. Women, children, elders. They burned the lodges. They took anything of value and destroyed the rest. His voice was flat, reciting facts, but Emma could hear the pain underneath like a bass note thrumming below melody. My wife Kaya died fighting to protect our son. Our 2-year-old son, Dakota. I found her body outside our lodge. She had been shot 3 times. She was still holding his blanket. Emma's anger faltered, cracking like ice under spring sun. I'm sorry. Wait. There is more. Ashki's jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath skin. Dakota's body was not among the dead. I searched. I counted every child, every body. I found his footprints leading away from the village, small prints in ash and mud, then nothing. The trail just stopped, as if he had vanished into air. He looked at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. I believe he was taken. Soldiers often take Apache children to orphanages or mission schools, to civilize them, to make them forget they were ever Apache. I have heard stories of children stolen this way, given new names, new families, new lives. They grow up thinking they are white or as white as brown skin allows. So you've been looking for him. It wasn't a question. For 5 years, every day, every settlement, every mission within 200 miles or more. I have walked roads I never knew. Existed, spoken to people who looked at me like an animal, searched faces of every Apache child I could find. His voice cracked. But there are problems, complications. He stood, began pacing the motion, helping him speak. My own tribe accused me of betraying them to the soldiers. They said I must have told the army where our village was because I was out hunting when the attack came. Because I survived when so many died. There was a man, Kuruk, who hated me because I was chief's son. He convinced the council I was a traitor. They sentenced me to death. Emma's breath caught. The American army wants me dead because I killed 2 soldiers while escaping my tribe's judgment. They tried to capture me to take me to prison. I fought. They died. Now there is a bounty, $500 for the warrior Ashki, dead or alive. That is more money than most white men see in a year. He looked at her with those dark eyes that suddenly made more sense. The wariness, the constant vigilance, the way he always positioned himself between her and any potential threat. But there is no bounty for an Apache woman named Asha. Women are invisible, harmless. No one looks twice at a woman gathering herbs or asking quiet questions about orphan children. Women can go places warriors cannot. They can enter settlements without rifles being raised. They can ask about missing children without being shot on sight. His hand went to his chest to the raw marks left by the binding. So I became Asha. I wore my dead wife's clothes. I learned to move differently, smaller steps. Eyes down, shoulders curved inward. I learned to speak differently, higher voice, softer words, asking instead of demanding. I learned to be different, to be invisible. And for 5 years I have searched every settlement, every mission, every orphanage within 200 miles and beyond. Did you find him? Emma asked, though she already knew the answer from the desolation in his voice. No, not a single trace. The pain in his voice was raw enough to bleed. No child matching his description. No boy who speaks Apache. No one who remembers a 2-year-old being brought in 5 years ago. It is as if he never existed, as if I imagined him completely. His voice broke. Perhaps he is dead. Perhaps he died in the desert, lost and alone, calling for a father who did not come. Perhaps I am chasing ghosts, building my whole life around a hope that died years ago. But if I stop searching, if I give up, then my son truly dies. Then everything I have done, the disguise, the hiding, the loneliness, all of it means nothing. Do you understand? Emma did. She understood too well. It was the same desperate logic that had made her run into a blizzard rather than let Outlaws take Tommy. The same impossible mathematics of love that made you do things that didn't make sense to anyone but you. When you found me and Tommy in the snow, she said slowly, working it out, you saw yourself. You saw Dakota. I wanted to leave you. Ashki's voice was barely above a whisper. Now, you were white. Your people took everything from me. My family, my home, my name, my very identity. Every instinct I had screamed to walk away, to let you freeze, to let the world balance the scales just a little. He closed his eyes, but then your brother cried in the sound. His breath hitched. It sounded exactly like Dakota, the same pitch, the same desperate need. And I thought, if my son is out there somewhere cold and alone and dying, I want someone to save him. I want someone to choose kindness over hate. I want mercy to exist in this world, even when it makes no sense, even when it hurts. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet. So I saved you. Not because you deserved it, not because I wanted to, but because somewhere maybe someone was saving my son. And if kindness was a debt, then I needed to pay it forward. I needed to believe that good things still happened, that love still mattered. The anger drained out of Emma, replaced by something more complicated, something that felt like understanding and hurt and gratitude all twisted together. You still lied to me. Every day, every moment, I did. Ashki didn't look away, didn't flinch from the accusation. Would you have trusted me if you knew I was a man? Would you have let me near your brother? Would you have stayed in this cave alone with me? If you knew what I was? Emma wanted to say yes, wanted to believe she was better than her fear, stronger than her prejudice. But she didn't know. She truly didn't know. And her uncertainty must have shown on her face because Ashki nodded slowly, sadly, as if she'd confirmed something he'd always suspected. Exactly, he said softly. The lie kept you safe. It kept me safe. It let us survive when truth would have killed us both. Sometimes deception is just another word for survival. And sometimes survival is all we have left. Exactly. The lie kept you safe. It kept me safe. Sometimes deception is just another word for survival. But now I know the truth. Now you know the truth. And you must decide what to do with it. Ashki stood. I will not blame you if you want to leave. Take Sarah. Take Tommy. Go back to the settlement. I will go back to searching. Alone as I was meant to be. Emma looked at the cave entrance where she could hear Sarah singing softly to Tommy. looked at Ashki, this strange, damaged, dangerous person who had saved her life and taught her to survive and lied to her face for months. When you saved us, Emma said slowly, did it matter if you were a man or a woman? When you taught me to hunt, to fight, to be strong, did your gender change any of that? No. Then maybe it doesn't matter now either. Emma took a breath. I'm still angry. I'm going to be angry for a while. But you saved my life. You saved Tommy. You're saving Sarah right now. So maybe I can learn to understand. Something like relief crossed Ashki's face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Because here's the truth, Silas knows we're out here now. He'll come back, with more men, and I have something he wants. The gold, yes, and I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. Emma squared her shoulders. I want to end this. Will you help me? Ashki studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, not the careful one Asha used to wear. Yes, I will help you end this, and then perhaps we can both stop running. They made their plan that night. Emma would lead Silas to the gold's hiding place, the ruins of her family's burned cabin 3 miles south. But they wouldn't go alone. They'd set a trap. Sarah agreed to ride back to the settlement and bring Reverend Caldwell with whatever men were brave enough to stand against outlaws. It wasn't many, just the Reverend, and 4 farmers, all of them looking scared but determined. These men killed the Hendersons, Reverend Caldwell said grimly. They've been terrorizing this territory for months. If we can end this, we must. The trap was simple. Emma would be visible near the cabin ruins. Silas would come for her and the gold. Ashki and the others would be hidden in the surrounding trees. When Silas's men tried to take Emma, they'd be surrounded. What they didn't count on was Silas being smarter than he looked. Emma stood in the clearing as the sun rose, making herself visible. Within an hour, Silas came, but he didn't bring 5 men. He brought 12, and he brought a hostage, Tommy. Somehow Silas had circled back, found the cave, and taken the little boy while Sarah was away getting help. Hello, Emma, Silas called out, staying on horseback, keeping distance. Tommy sat in front of him on the saddle, crying silently. I believe you have something of mine. And I have something of yours. Emma's heart stopped. She could see Ashki in the trees, bow drawn, could see the Reverend and his men positioned around the clearing, but none of it mattered if Tommy was in danger. Let him go, Silas. Show me the gold first. It's in the cellar, under the burned floorboards. Then dig it up, slowly. And if I see any of your friends in those trees make a move, I put a bullet in this boy's head. Emma had no choice. She walked to the ruins, pulled away burned wood, dug through ash, until she found the leather bags hidden in the old root cellar. 10,000 in gold. Her father's blood money. She dragged the bags into the clearing. There. Now give me my brother. Silas laughed. I don't think so. See, I've been thinking. A little girl who can survive a winter in Apache territory, who has warriors protecting her, who's smart enough to hide gold this well. That's a valuable little girl. Maybe I keep you both. Sell you to someone who needs workers, or wives when you're old enough. He smiled, showing yellow teeth. Your daddy owed me more than gold, Emma. He owed me for partnership, for trust. I'm collecting that debt now. Emma's hand moved to the knife at her belt. She'd never make it. Silas's gun was already pointed at Tommy. Then an arrow punched through Silas's shoulder. He screamed, dropped the reins. Tommy slid from the saddle. Emma ran, scooped him up, kept running as chaos erupted behind her. Ashki burst from the trees, not bothering with the bow now. He had a knife in each hand and moved like death itself. The Reverend's men opened fire. Silas's outlaws fired back. Emma dove behind a fallen log, covering Tommy with her body. The gunfire seemed to last forever and no time at all. When it finally stopped, 8 men lay dead or dying. Silas was on his knees, Ashki's knife at his throat. Please, Silas gasped. Please, I'll leave. I'll never come back. Just don't. You threatened a child? Ashki said, voice cold as winter. There is no mercy for that. He cut Silas's throat with the efficiency of someone who'd done it before. In the aftermath, standing among the dead with gunsmoke drifting through morning air, Emma held Tommy and shook. It was over. Silas was dead. His men were dead. They were safe. But safe felt hollow when you were standing in a graveyard of your own making. Reverend Caldwell approached, his face pale. That man? Asha. He fights like no woman I've ever seen. That's because Asha is not a woman, Emma said quietly. His name is Ashki. He's Apache. And he saved all our lives today." The Reverend was silent for a long moment. Then he walked over to where Ashki stood cleaning blood from his knife. "I don't care what you are," the Reverend said. "You saved these children. You helped rid this territory of murderers. You're welcome in our settlement." Ashki looked at him with those dark measuring eyes. "I cannot stay among your people. I am wanted by the army, by my own tribe. I bring only danger." "Then where will you go? I have been searching for someone for 5 years. My son, taken during a massacre. I will continue searching until I find him or until I die trying." The Reverend's expression changed. How old would he be now? 7, maybe 8. His name was Dakota. "There's a boy in our settlement. We found him wandering alone 5 years ago, after the soldiers burned an Apache village to the west. He was about 2 years old, couldn't speak, didn't seem to remember anything. We've been raising him. His name is Daniel now." Emma saw Ashki's face go absolutely still. "I need to see him." They rode back to the settlement in silence. Emma, Tommy, Ashki, the Reverend, and the surviving farmers. Sarah met them at the church, worried and relieved in equal measure. "Is it over?" "It's over," Emma said. Inside the small church, a boy was helping to set up chairs for Sunday service. He had dark hair cut short in the white style, wore simple homespun clothes, and moved with careful precision as if afraid of breaking something. When he turned around, Emma heard Ashki's breath catch. The boy had his eyes, the exact same deep black almond shape. And when he smiled uncertainly at the strangers, it was Ashki's smile, just younger and more innocent. "Daniel," the Reverend called. "Come here, please." The boy obeyed, approaching with his head slightly down, respectful and wary at once. Ashki knelt to be at eye level. His hands were shaking. "Hello," he said in English, then switched to Apache. "Dakota, are you Dakota?" The boy looked confused. "I don't understand, sir." Ashki tried again in Apache, but the boy just shook his head. "I only speak English. I'm sorry." "Daniel doesn't remember anything from before we found him," the Reverend said softly. "We've tried, but he was so young." Ashki reached into his pouch and pulled out the wooden bird carving he always wore. "Have you ever seen this?" The boy examined it carefully. "It looks familiar, like something from a dream I had once, but I can't remember. What was the dream? There was singing, and someone who smelled like smoke and cedar, and I felt safe." The boy looked up at Ashki. "Why are you crying, sir?" Ashki wiped his eyes roughly. "Because you remind me of someone I lost, someone I loved very much. I'm sorry for your loss." The simple kindness of it broke something in Ashki. He pulled the boy into a hug, brief, desperate, then released him quickly. "Thank you. You are a good boy, Daniel." Outside, Emma found Ashki standing alone, staring at nothing. "That was him, wasn't it? Your son?" "Yes. You have to tell him. You have to." "No." Ashki's voice was firm. "Look at him, Emma. He is clean, well-fed, educated. He has a home, a father who cares for him, a future. What can I give him? A life running from the army, sleeping in caves, never belonging anywhere. But you're his father. I was his father. The man who was Dakota's father died 5 years ago, with his wife and his village. That boy in there is Daniel Caldwell. He has a good life. I will not destroy it just to ease my own pain. So you're just going to leave, pretend you never found him. I am going to let him be happy. Sometimes that is what love means, letting go." Ashki walked back into the church. Emma watched through the window as he knelt again beside the boy. "Daniel, I want you to have this." He pressed the wooden bird into the boy's hand. "It belonged to someone very special. They would want you to have it." "Who was it?" "Someone who loved you more than anything in the world. Even if you don't remember them, they remember you, always." Ashki kissed the boy's forehead once gently like a benediction. Then he stood and walked out without looking back. Emma caught up with him outside the settlement. "Where will you go? I do not know. West, perhaps, or north. Somewhere I have not looked yet. You're still going to search. Even though you found him, I found a boy who is no longer my son. Dakota is gone. Daniel is happy. That is enough. It has to be enough. What if it's not?" Ashki stopped walking, turned to face her. "Then I will learn to live with that pain. The same way I learned to live with all the others." Tommy ran up, wrapping his arms around Ashki's legs. "Don't go. Stay with us." Ashki picked him up, held him close. "I cannot stay, little one." "Why not?" "Because I am not safe to be around. I bring danger wherever I go. I don't care, Tommy said fiercely. You're my Ashki. I love you. Emma saw something break in Ashki's face. He held Tommy tighter. I love you too, he whispered. More than you know. Then stay. Emma stepped forward. He's right. You said you spent 5 years searching for your son. But you found him, Ashki. He's safe. He's happy. Your mission is complete. She gestured to Tommy. But here's a boy who needs a father. A real one. One who won't leave him. I am not his father. You could be. If you chose to be. Family isn't just blood, Ashki. You taught me that. You saved us. You protected us. You already are our family. So stop running. Stop searching for what's lost. Stay and help us build something new. Ashki looked at her at Tommy back toward the settlement where his biological son lived a life he could never be part of. The choice was written in every line of his body, the pain of it, the impossibility. If I stay, the army might come. My old tribe might come. I bring danger to you. We'll face it together. Like we face Silas. Emma held out her hand. Stay, please. For a long moment, Ashki said nothing. Then he took her hand. All right, I will stay. For you. For Tommy. For the family I chose instead of the one I lost. 20 years later, Emma Hartley stood in the doorway of the home she'd built with her own hands, watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains in shades of gold. Behind her, she could hear Ashki teaching one of the neighborhood children to carve wood, his patient voice explaining the grain and flow of cedar. Tommy Doctor. Thomas Hartley now rode up on horseback, back from a call to a sick farmer 3 miles north. He was 23 tall and strong with his mother's eyes in Ashki's steady hands. How's old man Peterson, Ashki called. He'll live. Just pneumonia. I left medicine and instructions. Tommy dismounted, grinned. Though he asked again when you're going to teach him to track deer like you promised, when he stops complaining about his knees. Ashki ruffled Tommy's hair despite him being taller now. Go wash up. Dinner soon. Emma watched them together, father and son, in everything but blood, and thought about the winter 20 years ago, when she'd met a desperate woman who turned out to be a desperate man, who turned out to be the person she needed most in the world. Sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born with. Sometimes the lies people tell to survive become the foundation of truth. Sometimes loss transforms into love and grief into gratitude, and running into staying. And sometimes when you let go of what you cannot have, you discover what you've been holding all along. Ashki never saw Daniel Caldwell again. But he raised 7 children over the years, orphan strays, the lost and forgotten that frontier life created in abundance. He taught them to fight and to read, to track deer and to heal wounds, to be strong and to be kind. And every child received a wooden carving of a bird in flight, a reminder that freedom means choosing where you belong, and belonging means choosing who to love. That Emma thought was the truest thing Ashki had ever taught her, not with words but with a life lived honestly, in the only way he knew how, by saving what he could, protecting what he loved, and letting go of what he must. The sun sank below the mountains. Inside, the family gathered for dinner. And if Ashki's eyes sometimes grew distant, remembering a boy who called himself Daniel and didn't remember his real name, no one mentioned it. Some griefs were too sacred for words, but the love that grew from that grief, loud and present and real, filled the house with warmth that lasted long after night fell.